It started, as it so often does, with a single piece of paper. Not a formal letter, not a certified warning, just a crisp, white flyer tucked aggressively under my windshield wiper. It announced a new Neighborhood Watch initiative, an effort to preserve community standards, spearheaded by none other than the Concerned Homeowners Committee. I knew instantly who was behind it. There was only one person on our street with that much time and simmering indignation. Her name was Carol, but to everyone who had the misfortune of interacting with her, she was simply the HOA Karen. It was a bit of a misnomer, really, as our greatest blessing was the complete lack of a formal homeowners association, a fact that seemed to be a source of unending frustration for her. She had appointed herself the guardian of suburban mediocrity, a woman who viewed a slightly overgrown lawn or a recycling bin left out an hour too long as a personal affront. For the better part of a year, I had managed to exist outside her sphere of influence, a ghost in her machine of petty grievances. My luck, it seemed, was about to run out. The real trouble began not with the flyer, but with two glaringly bright orange traffic cones. I pulled onto my street one Tuesday evening after a long day at work to find them standing like sentinels at the curb directly in front of my house. This wasn't just any spot. It was public street parking, a piece of pavement owned and maintained by the city. It was a spot I, my family, and my guests had used for years without a single issue. There was no construction, no freshly poured concrete, no emergency that would warrant such a declaration of ownership. There were just two plastic symbols of suburban tyranny silently screaming that this particular patch of asphalt was off-limits. My first reaction was amusement. I chuckled, assuming it was a prank by one of the neighborhood kids. I got out of my car, moved the cones onto the strip of grass between the sidewalk and the street, and thought nothing more of it. The next morning, however, they were back. They stood in the exact same position, perfectly aligned, as if placed by a surveyor. This time there was an addition. A crudely written note, laminated in packing tape, was fastened to one of them. In thick, angry black marker, it read just one word: reserved. This had Carol's fingerprints all over it. This was her first official act as the self-crowned queen of our non-existent HOA. For the next week, we engaged in a silent, passive-aggressive war. Each evening, I would come home and dutifully move the cones. I'd place them on the grass. I'd set them beside her mailbox. I once even tucked them neatly behind a large oak tree down the street. And every morning, like a magic trick performed by a very angry, very bored magician, they would reappear at my curb. It was a ridiculous, petty war of attrition over a few feet of public property, and frankly, I was growing tired of being a participant. The conflict reached its tipping point when my sister came to visit. She had a newborn, and navigating the car seat, the diaper bag, and the baby itself was already an Olympic sport. When she arrived, Carol's cones were firmly in place. My sister had to park 2 blocks away and carry her baby and all the associated gear in the humid afternoon heat. As I helped her unload, I glanced over at Carol's house. There she was, peeking through her blinds, a smug, triumphant little smile plastered on her face. That's when the absurdity of it all curdled into genuine anger. This wasn't about a parking spot. It had never been about a parking spot. It was about control. It was about a woman so deeply unsatisfied with her own life that her only joy came from imposing arbitrary rules on everyone else. That evening, fueled by a potent cocktail of frustration and righteousness, I decided to stop playing her game and start playing by the real rules. I sat down at my computer and began digging through my city's online portal, looking up municipal codes and public ordinances. It took less than 15 minutes to find exactly what I was looking for. There it was, in clear, unambiguous language, under the chapter on public property: obstruction of public right-of-way. No person, unless authorized by a valid permit issued by the city, shall place or maintain any obstruction, including but not limited to barriers, cones, or signs upon any public street, alley, or sidewalk. I had her. The law, the actual enforceable law, was unequivocally on my side. The next morning, like clockwork, the cones were back. I didn't touch them. Instead, I took a picture, a clear shot showing the cones in front of my house on our very public street. Then I calmly picked up my phone and dialed the city's non-emergency line for public works. I explained the situation to the dispatcher, keeping my tone polite and factual. I described the cones, the location, and the ongoing nature of the problem. I even cited the specific municipal code I had found. The dispatcher was professional and efficient. She took down my address and assured me they would send a code enforcement officer to take a look. I thanked her, hung up, and waited by my front window, a fresh cup of coffee in hand. What happened next was a masterclass in civic efficiency. It was a thing of pure, unadulterated beauty. Exactly 9 minutes after I ended my call, a pristine white city truck, the kind used for public works and code enforcement, turned onto our street. It pulled up directly alongside the cones. A man in a fluorescent yellow vest and work boots got out. He didn't look around, he didn't consult a clipboard, he didn't knock on any doors. He simply took one look at the offending orange cones, bent down, picked them up, and unceremoniously tossed them into the back of his truck. He got back in his vehicle and drove away. The entire operation from arrival to departure took less than 30 seconds. It was swift, silent, and utterly glorious. The real prize, the moment I will replay in my mind for years to come, was Carol's reaction. She must have had a sixth sense for when her authority was being challenged, because the moment the city truck turned the corner at the end of the block, her front door flew open. She marched out onto her lawn, clad in her battle armor of a pastel pink tracksuit, her face a thunderous mask of disbelief and rage. She stared at the empty, liberated curb, then her eyes darted to my house. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. She looked like a fish that had just been informed the ocean was closing. I was still standing at my window, and I raised my coffee cup in a silent, victorious toast before giving her a small, friendly wave. She didn't take defeat gracefully. She tried to escalate, of course. We heard from another neighbor that she called the police to report the theft of her property. They apparently informed her, as I knew they would, that not only had the city removed them legally, but that she was the one in violation of a city ordinance. Her phantom HOA was crumbling before it had even been formally announced. Her power, derived entirely from bluff and intimidation, had vanished into thin air. There's a quiet truth in this whole saga. In the face of petty tyranny, our first instinct is often to back down. We move our cars, we avoid confrontation, we tell ourselves it's not worth the fight because it's just easier. But sometimes, a little bit of research and a 9-minute phone call are all it takes to dismantle a bully's entire platform. You don't have to be loud or aggressive, you just have to be right, and you have to know you're right. So if you ever find yourself dealing with your own version of HOA Karen, don't just get mad, get informed. Because reclaiming your peace and quiet is a victory. But watching a petty tyrant realize their made-up authority is completely worthless, that's a pleasure all its own.